Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the General Purposes Committee of Gloucester City Council. First item on the agenda is to record the appointment of Chair and Vice Chair from the annual meeting on the 20th of May 2024. So I'm going to be chairing this meeting for the next 12 months at least, and that Stephanie Chambers is the Vice Chair. On apologies, I have been told that Stephanie Chambers and Alistair Chambers are on their way, but they should only be 2 or 3 minutes late anyway. But other than that, I have no other apologies. I wonder whether there's any declarations of interest that need to be disclosed. No? I can't think of any. The minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January 2024. Are you happy that I sign those as a true record? That's done. Next one is public question time. We have no notice of any public questions. Then we've got petitions and deputations. No? Okay. Then the major item here, the number 7, the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel, pages 13 to 20. And we have the chair of the panel here to introduce, Graham Russell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as always, the panel meets to consider requests from the Council to look at particular member roles and to determine our recommendations to you about whether those roles require or justify special responsibility allowances. We also undertake, of course, 4 yearly comprehensive reviews of your allowances scheme. We were approached back in May, June, to look at a proposed new member role, effectively a cabinet support role. We looked at that on the basis of the evidence that we were given in terms of its engagement, the role's engagement with the leader, the deputy leader, possibly other cabinet members, and we quizzed the leader, I would say mercilessly, about the relationship of this role to normal cabinet business and the work of the council. And frankly, we felt that on the basis of the evidence we had at that time, that a special responsibility allowance was justified, and using our own criteria for determining the level of that allowance, we felt that at least initially the role appeared to have responsibilities broadly equivalent to those of a committee chair. So our recommendation to you and to the council is that a special responsibility allowance equal to that of committee chairs should be applied to this role, backdated to when we understood the role commenced working, 20th of May. We were, however, concerned, perhaps dipping a toe into matters that don't directly fall within our remit, just a little bit concerned to emphasise to you our feeling that the role of the Cabinet Support Officer, or whatever title is given to that role would be seen as an executive role, and therefore care should be taken in how that role interacts with the overview and scrutiny function, in the same way as the legislation urges caution about the involvement of cabinet members in overview and scrutiny. So we've put an advisory note in our report, and we've also urged the council to think carefully about the title of that position, and also, as you have with other member roles, and for clarity in the future, to prepare a role description for that role so that everybody is clear where its responsibilities lie and how it relates to other activities of the council. So our recommendations relate to the allowance to be approved from the 20th of May. The cautionary note we exercise there about overview and scrutiny, urging the council to prepare a role description, but also to bear in mind that we would like to review the role in the light of a period of operational experience, and I'm sure the council would want us to do that also. So those are our recommendations, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions at the moment?
Do you want your suggestion?
No, my suggestion, not a question. This is for questions.
Is there any other position like this nationally?
There are. And we have looked at those, we have looked at the allowances, we've looked at the role descriptions for those posts where they exist, and we feel that our recommendation is at the right level given the size and complexity of the City Council in relation to the other councils that have similar or equivalent roles.
Stephanie?
Hi. Thank you. Apologies for missing the beginning of your explanation there of the report. You said there's other roles like this across the country, and one of your recommendations is that this position doesn't sit on overview and scrutiny. Within these other roles across the country, are they, is this role, does it come up for overview and scrutiny? So are the committee asking this role questions?
It's come up in one council that I am personally involved with in respect of independent remuneration panels. We haven't explored the detailed working of all the councils that have equivalent roles as to how they interact with overview and scrutiny. But it is based on a discussion that a panel of which I am chair had at another council in the region, which was going down the same route, and they accepted the cautionary advice to have some care about the interaction of this role with overview and scrutiny.
The current member in this role doesn't sit on overview and scrutiny anyway, but I thought I'd let you note some things. I think the proposal to call it a portfolio advisory member is a good one. It's better than the original name that I indicated. We did have in the past cabinet champions, so there was about 6 of them, and did something like that, but not in the same way. We've already put this individual councillor on the airport board as part of the fact that we are the shareholders of the airport, and he's providing us with good information so that we can make a really good judgment on whether we go ahead with the sale of Gloucestershire Airport. And then on top of that, we are looking at putting this individual on the transformation board and also on the investment board. And one of the key priorities will be to generate more income for this council and to sweat our assets better. It's really about providing somebody with the opportunity to go around and think, do blue sky thinking and coming forward with ideas. Ultimately, the decisions or final decisions will be made by the cabinet members who've got the responsibility. But the idea is to bring in fresh thought and ideas which hopefully will benefit policy making of this council. And that's the reason for the role. We had thought of, when we were considering the administration of this council, having 8 members to the cabinet, which is the same as what they've got in Cheltenham and other places, but decided to pull back that on 7. But we still need somebody to help the cabinet look at ways and means that we can increase the income of this council via its commercial operations. And that's one of the jobs that we'll be putting there. So hopefully at the end of the year, you'll get a report back on what the portfolio advisory member has contributed to the development of policies and to development of ideas, how they benefited the City Council. So we suggest that we agree that we amend the recommendations to have that report back, and where you can actually receive a report from them. At the same time, of course, the independent panel will also want to review whether the role's been worthwhile and how it's achieved, what results it's achieved. Andy.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, this sort of role and whatever is entirely up to you as leader. That's the actual precedent has been set elsewhere and whatever. My personal thing, as it is a semi-executive and position and getting paid to do it, we do need scrutiny of that position, what they've actually done. Now, whether that's 6 monthly, yearly or whatever, I know the role will be done yearly by the remuneration board, but I think there's a lot of decisions going on and some very important ones. I think at least every 6 months that we need to have a report on what they've been doing, and they need to be scrutinised for it. You know, we might not have any questions for them because we can ask you or whatever, the cabinet member, we do need to be able to ask them, what exactly have you been doing, when you did it and whatever. That would be my only problem with it. Portfolio advisory member, great title. I think it's well thought of. It's obviously one that's been used elsewhere, I should think. But we just need to have an open dialogue, an open sort of council. If they're being paid to do that role, not just an ordinary councillor, they should be able to be scrutinised on it.
I would say that we could argue that point about all the group leaders and deputy leaders who are also receiving a special responsibility allowance, and there's no opportunity to directly scrutinise them at committee. But I do agree with you that it would be useful. So for this post holder to provide a written report either annually or every 6 months to the scrutiny committee, that would be fine.
That's what I said.
Okay. Tree.
I'm a little bit confused, really, because it's kind of my understanding that blue sky thinking and looking at policy and things like that is actually part of the role of the relevant cabinet member. I'm also, whilst we obviously do need to gain and garner the best information that we can about the airport, I'm also incredibly concerned that, we have, I think it's a £288,000 overspend. Already you have increased the number of cabinet members, and now you want to add another role with a special responsibility allowance. It just all seems almost a little bit jobs for the boys. And it has to be scrutinised because we can't just keep making more and more roles when effectively there are already people in place who should be doing those roles.
Sorry, do you want to answer a question first and then I'll ask mine?
Well, I mean, I say every other district council that's got a cabinet system has more cabinet members than we've got. And this is a more cost-effective way of dealing with the issues you talk about the blue sky thinking. I mean, the alternative is to create 8 members of the cabinet, which would be more onerous on the council's budget. By doing it this way, we are providing that input into the blue sky thinking, into creating a better commercial income for this council than we're doing at the moment. And my experience from being in opposition for the last few years, that I thought a cabinet of just 5 people was overstretched and they were overworked, and a lot of policy making was not as good as it should have been. And the important thing is to get the policy making right so that we deliver better services. And we need this additional person to carry on doing that. And again, at the moment, we've got a review of the future of the airport, and having somebody on the board that is a member of the council is useful to do that and to get that feedback so that we can make a decision of whether we go ahead or not. These are big decisions which are going to have financial implications that we need to fully understand, and having that additional person there with the skills to look at it is helpful to make sure that we get good decisions. You know, we could go to the point of just having a leader and deputy leader and have a cabinet, and then everybody would be overstretched. And we're trying to widen the involvement of all members in the policy development of this council. It was very narrow. It was an exclusive group, very elite in the last council, just 5 members. And you could see from the problems we now face that caused problems for this council. So we're trying to widen the executive, we're trying to widen the involvement in making decisions. And this role is critical to do that. And it's been considered by the independent remuneration panel. And they've come back and suggested this allowance. And the work that this individual will do will be just as onerous and it will contribute in just the same way as the allowances that your group leader might be getting as well. So we've got to look at being fair and equitable and the amount of work that they're planning to do and we want them to do. And you'll get that report back and you'll see that it really has been successful at the end of the 12 months. And we hopefully will drive up the commercial income of this council, and that'll help our balance sheet. Alistair.
Thank you. So I've got a series of questions. Are your current cabinet members competent for the role? If so, why are they needing additional support? It does not make sense. That's question number 1. Question number 2, if Ashley is experienced to be a special advisory person, what is his expertise in culture, communities, planning, housing, finance, and environment? I'd like to just to see what his experience has been in the real world environment for him to be a special advisor, because my understanding is the council officers would be more competent to be special advisors for the cabinet members, and then therefore to make their decisions based on a competent person that specialises in that role day in, day out. The third question is exactly what Therese said. I definitely think it's jobs for the boys. It's the council under the Lib Dems is a minority council, yet it's costing significantly more than the Conservative council, the previous administration, that had 5 more members. And in fact, it's costing more than when they had 6 more members, if you work out the cost of around £6,450, whatever it was for each councillor. And when you add in the jobs for the boys extra 2 chairs, sorry, jobs for the boys and girls, with the extra 2 cabinet positions, plus you add in all the independent remuneration increases on costs per chair, and then you add in the additional cost for this special advisory position, there is significant amounts more that this much smaller administration is costing taxpayers. And I just think this is another blatant waste of taxpayers' money. And I think it's disrespectful to those that voted for you, that put their hands in their pockets to just about afford council tax in the cost of living crisis, that you're throwing money willy-nilly, creating positions that don't really count. The council's never had them in the hundreds of years that this council's been in place. And I just think it is literally scratching backs. And also, my fourth question is it true that the Lib Dems have to pay 10% of their income that they earn from council to their manifesto war chest for fighting campaigns? Because my understanding is
Can we?
Sorry, final question.
We're getting into personal.
No, it's not. This is very important, Jeremy.
No, it's not. Because you can tell me, because you want to be personal, I assume that you will not be taking your special responsibility allowance by being an independent
Just bear with me.
leader of a
I'll answer the question afterwards.
you
Calm down, Jeremy. You're being very unreasonable. So my final question is, given the fact that you've obtained much more money for the Liberal Democrats, and given the fact that 10% of all the Liberal Democrats have to pay, bear with me, this is a very valid question, taxpayers' money, please let me finish, have to pay 10% of all income, I believe that this pot you're generating is to be used for electioneering and for your campaigning of the Lib Dems, because ultimately you created more money for the Lib Dems in respect to doing this. Is that not the case? Thank you.
Those questions are completely irrelevant to the discussion of a role that this council will be operating. I'm not prepared to answer them. I find them offensive and inappropriate. And for a man who will quite clearly accept his special responsibility allowance, I assume, unless you say otherwise, I find it quite unacceptable behaviour to start attacking people personally when we're looking at a particular role, the portfolio advisory member. The alternative is an additional cabinet member. That's the difference. We have to run this council, we have to take the lead, and we need to use our members effectively, just as the opposition will need to use their members effectively. And the most effective way that we can see is to create this post. We will show in 12 months' time that we will have generated a lot more commercial income than the current council has done in the past. And we will show that it's worthwhile. But we need to use the skills of the particular individual. And for you to personally identify him and name him in a committee, just like you named me in a motion at council, is inappropriate behaviour. And it's about time you got it right.
With the greatest respect and response, you asked me a question. With the greatest respect, we're councillors, our names are in the public domain, the public have voted for us.
I'm not answering those questions, all right? And I don't think there's any officer here that can answer those questions.
What about the 10% for Lib Dems generated?
I'm not answering any questions about what goes on in the Lib Dems. This is an inappropriate behaviour. It's abusive and it's not acceptable.
No abuse whatsoever.
It's not acceptable.
No abuse.
Can I just butt in?
Genuine questions.
Can I just come in there? Whatever Alistair thinks, this isn't the actual spot to ask things. That's for a full council if there's any questions. This is coming to full council Thursday? Yeah. Then you can sort of question and whatever, within reason. Tony's going to be evil. But it is up to Jeremy if he wants to, it's within his grant to, as leader, to create this position. Like I said, I just worry about the scrutiny of it. Whether there's a need for it, that is why we need the scrutiny to see if there's a need for it. Whatever I think personally, whatever is what is right and what he can do legally and whatever. And this, and like the remuneration gentleman said, it's equivalent to the chair of over scrutiny. So that would say to me that it needs to be scrutinised. And that's where we need to come in as a panel now to say, that's where we need to do it. And this will be debated on Thursday, whether whatever goes on and whatever, you can ask your questions, you can debate and whatever then. This is not quite the forum to do that. I do take some of Alistair's points, but not to that. But as long as we can have scrutiny in 6 months and then the panel do it after a year and you can provide us with information that how useful it is, which I think you'll have to anyway to convince the public, I think that's fine. We did it with 5 members of the cabinet. You're going to do it with 7/8. Fine, that's up to you. Whether the public will agree with you, that's up to them. And I think that's where we need to leave that now. And I think... will there be answering questions in council? Yeah, there will be questions and everything in council, because I personally have asked one of the questions anyway. But and then it'll be a debate. And if the answers don't come back like that you want in the debate, it'll be online and you can show it to everybody. So I think we just need to draw a line in the sand now. And as long as there is scrutiny, I think there's not a lot we can say or do about it.
I think we will agree for the scrutiny and report back to the scrutiny committee as well. Yeah, well, it will be the person will present their report. Declan, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I pretty much just agree with everything that Andy's just said there. I think I know it. No, not in this one. I would say, I would urge everyone to support this now, and then we'll judge it in a year's time. I mean, ultimately, it's the council to decide whether or not this has been a success or not, and I would argue that it will be a success. I think it's a well thought out role, and I think the council will benefit from it. I think just to look on it in terms of what the effect on alliances has been a bit short-sighted. I think we will gain much more from it if we go ahead, but ultimately, the judge will be this council and will be the electorate in a year's time. So it's a well thought out proposition. It's been thoroughly scrutinised by the independent remuneration panel, and I think we should leave it there for now and give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and that'll be on us. But I would urge the committee to support this tonight.
Yeah.
Yep, so I'd like to just make some comments that I feel are important. So commercialising the operations of the council, I think, officers do a good job at trying to commercialise all the income they can. However, there's always more to be done, and that is a good thing. I think it's unfair to say we were an elite cabinet. We were an economical cabinet, that's for sure. We worked hard and we did get our job done. You mentioned that group leaders take special allowances. However, we're not in administration, so to be subject to questions wouldn't be what group leaders would be. You weren't subject to questions when you were group leader of opposition. However, somebody that is you say it's not a decision making, but they're highly influenced in the decisions that will be made by cabinet. I think they should be subject to scrutiny. I also think 6 monthly or yearly reports, although it will take some time, I do feel that they should be subject, as chairs of committees are subject to questions, I would feel that they should be subject to questions at council as chairs of committees, because this is in line with the same amount that they would be taking. And you say, this is going to generate more income. I think it's going to be very difficult to judge whether that actually happens or not, and how it's reported and how you're going to monitor that, I'd like to see. But will you commit that if you can't demonstrate that this role has generated more income, that you will reconsider this? Because although saying, yes, adding an extra 2.5 cabinet members or 2 in a support role will be beneficial to the council, this is public money. So, if we all became cabinet members, we would all generate more income. Where do you draw the line? You do need to see that this is public money, and you do need to be subject to the public scrutiny on this. So if it doesn't generate more money, will you commit to retiring this role?
The role is not only to generate commercial income, and one of the roles will be to consider at the moment the future Gloucestershire Airport, which is under review, but also it might well be dealing with the transformation services of the council. So there's a number of aspects to the role that would be important, and therefore we'll see how it goes within a 12-month period. We will ensure that there are opportunities to question the person, and that would have to be, I think, as Andy said, in a sort of report to the scrutiny committee, a written report to the scrutiny committee. If there are questions at council about issues related to cabinet matters, then it would be the cabinet members that would respond. So if there was issues related that this person was involved within my portfolio, I would make sure that it was myself that answered those questions, nobody else. I give, as as leader of the council, you have executive responsibility, which you then delegate to your cabinet members. I am not delegating any executive decisions to this person. It's there as an advisory person to look at aspects of council policy and to come up with maybe additional ideas which will be beneficial for this local authority. I've got one suggestion, which was from Andy Lewis, which was that we have a report back. Yeah, okay. All right. Is there any other suggestion?
I've got a question for the remuneration officer.
Go on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With regards to other authorities that have a similar position in this role, would they be questioned in full council on decisions they've made? Would they or not?
Haven't been able to analyse in depth all of the equivalent roles. We have extracted from regional surveys, in fact wider than regional surveys, those councils that have what are mainly called cabinet support assistants or cabinet support members, in terms of getting some sort of idea of the size of council, the titles, the roles and the allowance. But we haven't had the time or the opportunity to delve into how those particular posts work operationally. But I mean, the range, you know, Barnsley, Derbyshire, Wigan, Coventry, East Hampshire, Greenwich, you know, their county councils, unitary councils, district councils, all have equivalent posts from what we can extract from the regional survey. Had we had more time, yes, we certainly could have gone into those individual councils, perhaps liaise with their independent remuneration panels and got a better idea of how they interact with the cabinet, the scrutiny, the council, what have you. But we were just looking for equivalent posts, type of authority, size of allowance, to see if our suggestion was broadly in line, and we were satisfied that it was.
Thank you. Given that this is going to go to a review and scrutiny in 6 months' time, would there be, at that point when it's going to come there to review the situation, would we be able to have information at that point? Bear in mind that obviously you've had time pressures to produce the paperwork you've done. Would we be able to have opportunity to find out if the other equivalent roles nationally would be in that situation where they'd be questioned during council? Because that'd be very interesting to make sure the public get their money's worth, and it's not just a job for the boys. Thank you.
I think that at the time when the panel will review this, and we thought certainly a 12-month period of operation would be what we were thinking of. At the time of the review, we would probably want to get that sort of in-depth analysis of how the role has worked here and how it works in equivalent authorities. So yes, that would be part of our review of operational experience.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right then, let's move on. I think we're okay with, take a vote that we're okay with the portfolio advisory member being description. We're okay with recommendation 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and that we also agree that the portfolio advisory member will provide a written report, which they can be questioned on, to the scrutiny committee once a year, you think? Or
Mr. Chair, I think for the first year, it might be nice to have it every 6 months or whatever. The first 6 months is possibly not going to be a lot, but it'll give us a flavour of what exactly is happening, and also let the public know why, you know, and actually sort of prove to a certain extent that, because obviously the airport is going to be vital this time within 6 months, so we'll know. And I think we need to know what's happening and be able to question them about the airport as well, as they're on going to be on the committee, aren't they, on the board?
well, they're going to be on the board. We agree should we do every 6 months for the first year and then make a decision whether it should be an annual report? Okay, those are the recommendations. As far as questioning a member of the airport board, that would be okay if, of course, the airport board was invited to the scrutiny committee as they've done before. If it's a matter of council policy related to the airport over it, then that's the responsibility. I have that responsibility as being the shareholder, representing the shareholders, so therefore any questions of that nature should be addressed to me. John.
I was just going to echo what you said. Any questions relating to the airport should be addressed to the executive member with the responsibility for the airport, which is the leader of the council. The only other point I was just going to make is when you discuss this at council on Thursday, it will be no more appropriate there to discuss the individual's competence or qualifications for the role than it is tonight. This is not a discussion about the individual's suitability for the role. This is a discussion about whether or not the role should have a special responsibility allowance.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, John. Can I have a question for John?
No, we've finished now. Can I have a vote on the recommendations? Those in favour, please show. Those against? 1. Thank you. Abstentions? "25 minutes left. One of the other issues that needs discussing, which is a verbal one, is the whether the council's constitution needs to be changed. One, to consider questions to cabinet member. In the past, there had been the opportunity to ask verbal questions, but we restructured it, or previous administration restructured it so that there's written questions and supplementary. Thank you. And there are some members who would like to review whether we go ahead with returning to verbal questions only. So that's one issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm suggesting that maybe we consult with members of the council following the council meeting on Thursday about their view of whether they wish to change over. I'm quite keen to go to just verbal questions, but it depends on whether people want to put in written questions. And 2, there's also the issue of the drafting of motions to council, where councillors are using the word "I." They basically give in their speeches. They are exceptionally long, and we're looking at whether we should certainly make sure that councillors are trained on how to draft motions, but 2, whether or not those motions sort of have a word limit so that we can easily understand them and are frankly easier to amend than what we've seen in the papers that are going to Thursday's council meeting, where some of those motions are almost as long as a novel, and we really do need to get them written in a way that makes it easy for all members to understand precisely what the mover is trying to get to, which I find very difficult at times, and so that if anybody, so people can vote clearly, knowing what they're voting for, and 2, whether if they wish to amend it, they know how to amend the motion. And there are some motions that really leave a lot to be desired. There's the first motion on Thursday and the last motion on Thursday are being drafted correctly and are easy to understand and easy, frankly, to amend. And I just wonder what other members of the committee have got to say about that. Stephanie.
In relation to the motions, I definitely support training. I think that would be useful to everybody. And I would support something particularly like a template, with the recommendations, a bulk, with a word maybe limit suggestion, but I would absolutely go against a word limit. And I think when we're talking, there was a mention about qualifications of Ashley, which, is maybe not fair.
Can we stop making members of this council?
Apologies. About cabinet support role member, I think we need to understand that members of this authority are representative of our communities. Not everybody has the same writing ability. They might use different ways of putting things across. And I think to criticise isn't fair. To train is good. To provide templates and support to show how to write motions is good. But a word limit, I think, would be very unfair, because some people don't have the ability to write succinctly. Some people do, some people don't. So that's my thing on the motions. One other little point that I'd just like to discuss after is timing of meetings, because this being at 5 o'clock today was extremely difficult, and I understand, you know, we're a nighttime authority and 5 o'clock to me isn't a nighttime meeting, and it was very difficult for me to get here.
This evening's meeting was an emergency meeting, and we had to push it in before the meeting that's on at 6 o'clock, and there was just no way of getting it in the diary otherwise. Anybody got any comments? Alice?
Thank you, Jeremy. So, yeah, the LGA states that councillors should be from a broad area of the community, representing those on low income, those on high income, those of young youth, those of middle age, and those of a senior age. It should be representative of the whole community. And to say that you should curtail democracy based on too much information, too many words, not written how you would like it, is a blatant disregard and disrespect to all members of the community. It's got to represent everyone in the community, and some people aren't as literate as others. Some people may struggle. Some people may use AI to facilitate their opportunity to bring forward democracy, and we should celebrate democracy. Whether you agree with how it's written or not, democracy, they have been represented and elected for their community. And for you to curtail that and to drain it in because you believe that they've given too much information that's not relevant, and you prefer a broader, more high-level motion that doesn't really give facts, doesn't really give information, in my opinion, it's not really fit for purpose. And I think those that are worded out more clearer, give a lot more understanding to what they're trying to achieve, is a much better way to ensure that everyone in the community can have their say. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Declan?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I just wanted to make a comment about the motions and the writing of motions, and take on board what Alistair has just said there. I think generally training would be, it wouldn't be necessarily compulsory, but it would be a good thing, because speaking personally, I am rubbish at drafting motions, believe me. And in fact, one motion I did a year or two ago, Andrew spotted it. It looked remarkably similar to a template on the ALDC. Yeah, so just a coincidence, of course. But I'm not very good at writing motions either, and I wouldn't mind a bit of training and how to do it better. So, and I think a lot of us could benefit from that. So that would be something I would very wholeheartedly endorse.
True.
I think that the idea of training for motions, whilst again it shouldn't be mandatory, is a really fantastic idea. And I think it would also be really useful if there was something on the intranet for councillors that they could go to look at that when they're writing a motion. Some sort of template. It is really daunting. I know I was really, really worried about the first couple of motions that I wrote, but thankfully had guidance from somebody that's reasonably good at it. But the thing about the word count, whilst I fully appreciate that it can be difficult to sift out what is and what isn't relevant information, I don't think that we should have a maximum word count, because I believe that if the template is correct, a lot of that blurb would be there almost as a supplemental piece where people can then go to find out further detail. So it would eradicate the problem of having to wade through loads and loads of stuff unless people wanted to. You'd be able to see the point very concisely at the beginning, but the rest of that information would be there. Look, I know with the motions this time, there is one which is particularly long, which could be daunting if you're looking at it, trying to sift out, what is and isn't relevant. But if you read it all, it's actually really interesting stuff that's in there. And it would be a shame to take away from that. But I do agree that it somehow needs to be put into sections via a template, so it's all just a little bit clearer. But the word count, if people have got something interesting to say, why not?
Cheers, Jeremy. This is difficult because I agree with everybody. Because we shouldn't limit, we should train. My personal opinion is some are too long and they lose their effectiveness because people are switched off by about halfway through. And there's also, there's certain parts of the notice of motion you'll agree with and other parts you won't. Then which way do you go? Do you make it so negatory that you can't vote on it and whatever? And it's just, I think I agree with Tree that the information should come out in debate, and it's there, and you can be as forceful and you can be as dynamic as you like, and you can put your point over. Even if you're just reading from a script, you can do it that way. It's very, very difficult. I think putting a limit on is just going too far. The idea of a template, well, how do you put a notice of motion in a template? It doesn't work. I think you've got to say your preface at the beginning and then qualify it, but not in such a long verbal diatribe sometimes at the end of it. But you've got that ability to do in discussion, because how long do you get in? 5 minutes, is it? 5 minutes. And if you can't say what you want to say in 5 minutes, you're in the wrong job, to be perfectly honest. But when it comes back to questions, because we've gone past that. If you get a written answer to a written question, you get a fuller answer. But does that politically mean you can't have a go at the opposition? You know, is it losing that little bit of battle? But what we don't want it to do is turn into parliamentary bun fight, which is no good to anybody, to be perfectly honest. It's rubbish. Personally, I think the questions idea works well here. I think it works well in the county. You get a succinct answer. You get a qualifying answer, a supplementary. So, and if you don't get a proper answer that time, well, you ask it next time again. Or you ask it in scrutiny, or you do something like that. I think questions, personally, as an ex-cabinet member and everything, yes, you could have taken the verbal ones, no problem at all. Did you give a correct answer half the time, or did you just say, I'll give you a written answer and go from there? I personally think questions work. Notice of motion need to be addressed because they are too long. I understand with the information and all the rest of it, some of it's very interesting, but that can be said in council itself. So that's where I'm standing. I might get evil looks from somebody else, but oh, not you, mate.
Right then. Thank you, Andy. I mean, I think the issue on questions, you know, and there's questions about questions at council, is that we ought to get through full council, and then it would be useful if the Democratic Services just wrote to every member of the council and asked them, you know, in which way would they like to ask questions? Would they like to just go with a verbal completely, or go with the written and the supplementary verbal? As a method of doing it, would be, and we can bring back a discussion to the next General Purposes Committee with regard to motions. I find it's easier to understand what somebody's trying to achieve if it's short, sharp, to the point, and if there is a narrative there which is part of a speech, it's better to be separated. And also, when I'm being asked to vote on something, I think it should be this council, not I ask council to do this. It's about being a collective now rather than the personal one. And I think a template and some training to help people draft motions would be really useful. And as far as the word count, it's advisory. I think, you know, we often get, can you draft this? We need 250 words. We need to just make sure that we keep it, try and self-discipline members so that they can keep the motions to short, sharp and succinct. And when you do have a word count and you then edit it down, you often find that what you drafted in the first place starts to read much better and people understand it. And I think that's the importance about us when we're drafting motions, that every member of the council, when they read the motion, understands what the objective is behind it. So I would suggest that maybe we also consider what we should do about improving the way we debate motions at council and how they're drafted for members to read, for the public to read as well. Andy.
Just coming on that, I mean, I think what we need to do is look at, notice the motion have gone before, add up the number of words, and if it does seem too long, well, I'd do it in the training, get them to say, well, that one could have been done like this, and train them like that. It is all subjective. People do like to say their piece and whatever, but I think a bit of training and that, it'll save them a lot of time, to be perfectly honest, trying to put it all together. They can use all that information, which they've obviously thought about, and they can say it in council, make a real impact. But I would not like to sort of limit people straight away. I think we need the training first, with the help of some wonderful officers we've got over there, and go from there. I always creep.
Are we okay with those recommendations for us to bring back?
I just wanted to add
discussion
something
to the next
regarding the
meeting.
question. Doing it to understand recently is the amount of time that week and Tanya will know the week or fortnight before the questions are due. You know, sometimes that's all you're doing and all you're discussing with officers, and I imagine that's all they're doing. So I think there was a bit of reflection on my mind. Was that the right way to have done it? I think I would still support having written questions in some form, but I think understanding when you put the question to members, the impact and how it distracts from the day-to-day work is important. And I don't know how you could portray that to members when asking the question, but that's one thing that I think is important. And just one thing on the motions, I think we need to understand again, you know, we are not just talking to ourselves. And I think sometimes we do forget that in this chamber, we're not talking to ourselves, we're talking to the communities. And it's about how they can understand things. So I think given the opportunity for them to see things in writing and then maybe watch it in debate as well is important. And sometimes people understand things, what we understand things, or you or me understand things as one way, some people understand things as different. And I think there's more and more work on neurodiversity, and there's some recent laws on employment with neurodiversity. And I know we're not employees, but I think we need to take on that sort of guidance as well and how we do things in the council.
Can we agree to come back at the next meeting in September time with consideration of both those areas of council procedures? We need to finish now at 5 to 6 because there's another meeting taking place straight away. Is that okay? Yeah.